24 hours from a terrible shooting in Buffalo, first and foremost. Prayers to all the families of the victims. Um, I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, I thought about what to say just driving last night, driving around, getting some food, knowing we were going to do the show tomorrow and topics about this. And you almost just like, you don't even have, you're almost numb to it. That's the crazy part. Like, it's almost like what else can I say that anybody else that thinks like us, that thinks sensibly can't say? Like, what else can we say? And I started thinking about it. It's like, it's funny how the blame game is shifting now, like on both sides, right? Like Democrats are no longer even like using gun reform as the central core problem here. Now it's become social media. Like social media is the evil of all evils. Social media is the problem, right? Social media is this, social media is that, social media, social media, social media, social media. And like, I feel like there's a conversation to be had about social media and their role in our society and social media companies and how much culpability they have in these events, not just this, but other situations. I feel like there's a conversation to be had there, but I think at the end of the day, gun reform and this country's infatuation with guns is and another conversation that we don't have is mental health in this country that isn't properly addressed or handled are more of the central themes for me than a Twitch stream that was allowed to have had with someone murdering people, you know what I mean? Or people getting on Twitter and saying stupid shit. Like,
yeah,
I feel like that's the conversation. But that's not the conversation that's going to be had. Yesterday, you know, you listening to all the press conferences and, the governor, police chief. I mean, everything was just social media and yeah, we'll have a gun pack in on the governor's desk or the president's desk or in Congress by Monday morning. But social media, it's like, no, it's like that's not the issue. It's one of the issues, but I would say it's like fifth down the line. Like, I feel like there's more pressing issues. Like, I feel like racism, obviously, this was a hate crime. It was racial targeting. Like, clearly, obviously, you have the gun issue. Mental health that does not get covered or doesn't get the attention that it should in these situations. And it's so frustrating because I feel like that's the central issue that we lack. And a lot of this is just, there is a huge mental health crisis in this country and it completely goes ignored and unaddressed, and it needs to stop. And we really need to start addressing it when we talk about these situations. And then of course you get out and you can go down the list of like what's important as far as the talking points, So that's what I started thinking about, honestly, because as far as the actual tragedy, like what else can you say? It's horrible. It's terrible. Thoughts and prayers has become so polluted of a phrase now because it's used in such a bad way by.
Can I say this too?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I'm rambling. Go ahead.
The thoughts and prayers thing bothers me because I feel like the people who say thoughts and prayers don't even think or pray about the situations that they say thoughts and prayers to.
No.
Okay, I can keep going.
It's just a thing to say, right? Yeah. It's like sorry for your loss. It's just one of those things you say. Because
everyone who I know who says thoughts or prayers are people who are, I guess, I don't want to say Christian or religious, but like lean right, who don't want to have the conversation about gun reform. So their go-to is like, hey, I do care because this is awful, but thoughts and prayers because I'm avoiding the other situations. But you say thoughts and prayers, but you don't really think about
it. How offensive is that to tell somebody, to tell a mother of a person that got shot yesterday senselessly? Thoughts and prayers. My thoughts and my prayers with you. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to pass gun reform? No, we're not going to do that. But my thoughts and prayers are with you.
But I wonder how many of those people actually go to bed that night and pray for the victims. Or pray for our solution for gun. Like, what do you pray?
No, I get it.
I'm at the point now. Like, I haven't even for the first time I thought about what are these people even praying for when they pray? Like, that's an interesting conversation I want to have with a Christian. Like,
no more gun violence. No more gun violence. Are you really praying for that? Because you're not doing anything to alleviate the issue that leads to gun violence.
And what are your thoughts? Your thoughts are just like, oh, I see what happened, thinking of you. Like, I to me, like, that phrase always frustrated me, but now, like, now that I'm starting to actually dissect it and, like, putting myself in their shoes where it's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't even think half of you and there are probably some, but I don't even think most of you are actually praying for the victims of Buffalo tonight because that's has nothing to do with anything that your political party is even remotely caring about. That doesn't affect you. Racism doesn't
Mhm.
affect you. White supremacy doesn't affect you. Yes, you may not be racist, and yes, you may not want to see that type of violence happen, but at no point do I think, after the 10 seconds of you watching that news report, do you think about that for the rest of your day? You see it, it may make you sad, but I don't think you go to bed at night and praying for that. Maybe some do, but I have a hard time believing that most do. The people who reduce their sympathy to thoughts and prayers. But sorry.
No,
Continue.
bro, no, you're preaching to the choir. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
else I can add to that because you're absolutely 100%. Like, it's just, it's mind boggling to me. It's like literally like if everybody in the country, 330 million people started buying Teslas, right?
Mhm.
And Teslas were just going bad at an alarming rate. Like literally, people are driving it down the road and crashing, killing people left and right.
Right.
And the solution is like, hey, let's halt the production of Teslas. Let's investigate
Right.
what's going on. No, we can't do that. It's a car company. It's business. It's the American way. What do you mean? Just stop and production of
It's
this
like a
popular
1930s
American.
bootlegger. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's not a great analogy, but it's like, but what I'm saying is like, if this one thing or the culture around this one thing is causing people to die, and we can't even have a conversation of like, hey, we need to address like why people are dying because of this one act or the culture of this act or the culture that is surrounded by this. Like, you know what I mean? Like we need to talk about that
Yeah.
and actually have a conversation about it and not just like yo, and I feel like we say this every other fucking time, so I hate saying it. Not everybody that owns a gun is going to go out and shoot 45 people or
It's
20 people,
important to make
whatever.
that disclaimer. It is because
I get
a
that.
lot. Yeah.
I now own a gun.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be here a phony and say that, oh, yeah, all guns should never. But I do feel like we need to have a conversation about the type of people that are going and buying guns,
Right.
how easily accessible buying a gun is. It is easier for me to buy a gun in this country than to buy a house.
That's wild.
Like, and
And
yes, I know people are getting the comments and say, well, a house is this and a gun is that. They're not the same. It, but just think for a second. It is easier for me to purchase a gun, a weapon, depending on what gun, a weapon of mass destruction. There goes a blast from the past as far as the term. A
I haven't heard
weapon
that in a while.
of
Jeez.
mass destruction, right? In a lot of ways, depending on the type depending on the type of weapon you buy, right? It
Yeah.
can be a weapon of mass destruction, right?
Yeah.
To than it is to buy a fucking home
Yeah.
in this country. Like, and like no one bats an eye at this. No one sits there and says, yeah, like that's a problem. We should address that. Like that's an issue. Yeah, I don't even know. I like that, and that's it's like honestly, and it's like and part of it, I'm tired because we have the same conversations over and over
Yeah. That's
and
my thing.
over,
It's annoying to have the same conversation about gun control every time there's a mass shooting.
and it's like we
Um,
get nowhere.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why.
I think it's important to have the conversations though, because I think at different times people are listening. You might reach someone who wasn't listening to the conversation before. Maybe they're new in the conversation. I don't know. I like to echo your point. I mean, there's when it comes to gun control, and I think a lot of people, especially in this country, and I'm speaking to like conservatives and people who think differently than us. I think they think that all we want is like to take away guns. That's not the truth.
No.
Obviously, a lot of different things have to be done with mental health. Um, to me, though, I think it is also important to convey the message that yes, we do think that economics have something to do with it. Mental health has a lot to do with it, but the existence of how many guns are in this country is a large part and the reason why there's a lot of gun violence. For me, as much as mental health is a problem in this country, there are crazy people in every country. There are mentally sick people in every country. There's the problems with mental health in this country exist in every other country. What's the difference? The
But
difference
gun
is
violence doesn't exist in every other country, right?
exactly,
But when you
exactly.
have, but I feel like the mental health thing is tied into the gun thing
No, I
because
agree. I'm not saying let's not
because
tackle mental health, but what I'm saying is that guns are a problem. The
oh,
amount of
absolutely,
guns that
we
we
both
have
agree with
are a
that. Yeah,
problem.
yeah, yeah.
We have to come to this general consensus that, hey, doing something about this problem isn't taking away your Second Amendment right. I don't know how we message that towards other people who are gun, let's just be honest, gun nuts. But that's something that we need to convey. The stats and the statistics are on our side with everything. The amount of guns that are in this country are a direct correlation to the amount of gun violence that we have, period. Also, right-wing violence, right-wing extremism is just, if you look at the stats, are just out of control right now. There's a culture in this country, and I don't want to label every Republican, I don't want to label every
No.
conservative this because they're not. But there is a culture on Fox News, Breitbart, all these right-wing media. Everyone who leans right and decides that they want to get their news sources from conservative media are being fed this great replacement bullshit, this extremist fascist bullshit. And whether or
Mm-hmm.
not they take it to the extreme that this shooter take it is on them. Not most people do. Obviously, what this guy did was really extreme, but the brainwashing material, I guess, is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not they go out and shoot up people is one thing, but we have people who I've known my whole life who seem to be really rational people who now live in another universe, believing in different theories or different things, whether it's QAnon, whether it's transgender people are trying to groom your kids, whether it's critical race theory is, trying to make your white kids feel it's always something. And slowly but surely, all this propaganda is for some reason stroking up this type of violence within the right wing. Look at all the statistics, right wing versus left wing violence. Everybody who's listening to this show right now, just Google right wing violence versus left wing violence. Pull up any graph that you see on images. You will see that the right wing, white supremacy, is the leading factor in domestic terrorism, and it has been for the past decade or so. And a lot of that is directly attributed to the media that we're consuming. So to me, mental health is an issue, yes, but also the access to guns and the people who can get the guns right now. The right wing has an infatuation with weapons, and they're getting them, and they're easy to get, and that's the biggest problem to me. It's a whole bunch of things that we need to
It's
fix.
a whole bunch of bullshit. It's a whole
Yeah,
bunch of shit that's going
yeah.
on that I don't think anything is getting properly answered and tackled and addressed, right? Yeah, you know me where I stand on the whole. I think it's white Christian conservative terrorism. Let's call it what it is. Like the same way we in the American news media can sit there and label all of Islam as jihadist and extremist. And what is the difference? What is the difference? What is the difference between a crazy in Lebanon somewhere blowing up a fucking school and doing it for in the name of Allah and this shit? What this guy just did. He didn't do it in the name of Jesus. Like that's the difference. Like
I
what is
think
the difference?
there's no. So to me, what I would push back with you is that when that happened with um, the Islamic extremists, we didn't want to label all Muslims that. I would be very weary in using that language just because I don't want to label all.
I'm not
I
labeling.
know you're not. I know you're not.
Mhm.
But to me, messaging is important, and so like I'm trying to
Agreed.
figure out a way
Agreed.
where it's.
I'm just
I get
talking
I
about
get what
the
you're saying. I
I'm
get
just
what you're
talking
saying.
about the portrayal from the media perspective, right? The
Yeah.
media never calls it what it is. It's terrorism. Like
Yes. Yes.
it's terrorism.
Yes.
It's just a white face
Yes.
that's from Springfield, Illinois, or whatever,
Or
White Town, America.
they're hesitant to call it terrorism.
Right. You
Yeah.
don't want to call it terrorism, but Muhammad blows up a school in Lebanon. He's a
Right.
terrorist.
Right.
It's like, no, it's the same shit.
They're both terrorists.
You're
Yes.
it's the same thing, and it's about time that we start labeling it and calling it what it is. And I say this every single time. I am more afraid of domestic Christian white, and that's what it is. Like, let's be honest. It's white, predominantly white, not all, but predominantly white, Christian, conservative, extremist terrorism. I'm more afraid of that shit than I am some motherfucker blowing up a school or a building or anything because
Yeah.
of Allah or American expansionism in the Midwest in the Middle East or whatever. Like I'm more afraid of that shit. Like, think about it. People are going to a fucking grocery store. One of the most mundane tasks we could do as adults and people and human beings, right? Is go fucking shop for food. And you're getting slaughtered. Slaughtered.
Yeah,
Like, and like, no one sits there and says, you know what, we have a problem here. I shouldn't say no one sits there, but like,
no. To me, it's more right wing extremism than it is Christian extremism, though. Like to me, even
but it go hand in hand, bro. They go in a lot of ways. They go hand in hand.
I get what you're saying. I think a lot of the time, like for instance, like white evangelicals make up a huge part of the Republican base. There's no denying that whatsoever. And a lot of the problems that I have with bigotry and homophobia and it's directly tied to the white evangelical branch of the church. I understand that completely. But to me, it's also like, I don't think that guy did what he did because of his Christian faith. It was more being a white supremacist and believing right-wing extremism. Now, it might be tied in. Yeah, I know what you're saying about that. But I think we got to be very careful.
I get it. But I think most people get where I'm going to come from. It's the people that don't want to listen to what I'm saying are going to try to tie it to what I'm not saying, which is, I know what you're doing, so I don't buy into it. I'm saying that it's all coming from the same company is feeding you the same product. It's just a different brand, right? Post is feeding you, Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Pebbles, but they're feeding you bad cereal, is what I'm saying. They're all feeding you this garbage.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a matter of the brand attached to it. We're not talking directly about religious fundamentalists. We're talking about a white supremacist, but it's all coming from the same factory. It's all coming from the same source. And that's what I'm saying. And that needs to be, dealt with, you know what I mean? Like, but I attack religion sometimes because it is let's not kid ourselves. And we'll talk about Roe v. Wade, like evangelicals, white Christian conservatives, a lot of them run this country. And like, so you have to, like, when you have that much power and you have that much sway to decide elections and to put fucking right-wing judges in chambers, when shit like this happens and the messaging comes from your side, you have to wear that.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
You don't get to just say, oh, well, hey, he was a white supremacist. He wasn't saying anything about Jesus. No. You don't get to delineate from that. You don't get to separate that. No, it comes from your fucking side of the camp. Now, it may not be everybody. And I'm not going to sit there and say like every white conservative Christian that goes to church and pays their taxes and a good, solid American that I just happen to disagree with on policy doesn't find this abhorrent. Of course, of course they do. But the bottom line is you support a party and you support a network that pollutes the masses with this shit. And it's like, if you won't say anything about it, who is, right? Like, if you can't sit there and say, yo, what we're doing is trash and somebody needs to say, like, in mass, not just a couple people, but in mass need to say it. They won't say it. Like, then that's why I attack a lot of these people, because it's like, okay, like, how can you be Christian and pray to Jesus and pray to God and pray to whoever and then hate black people? Right. Like, I'm not the biggest religious person in the world, right? But I think that book tells you to like love everybody and, we're all children of God, but unless you wear a dress and you go and you're a man and you go pee in the girl's bathroom, then you're not the children of God. You're just the world's worst person. Like I'm being triggered.
No, I get what you're saying.
It bothers me, man.
You're saying basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the white evangelical church and the community are largely responsible for this white supremacy narrative that the Republican base has latched onto and has caused people like the guy from Buffalo to do what he did.
Yes, because I feel like white evangelicals, conservative, I shouldn't even say white because there's some black evangelicals. There's some evangelicals understood the game a long time ago. They want to win elections and they want to control the levers of power in this country because they get to basically put in people that will do their bidding, right? And these people will get in bed with a party and any organization to advance their cause. Like, I don't think a white evangelical and let's say the most extreme neo-Nazi white supremacist will necessarily get along on a lot of issues, but they do business together because they can both advance their causes and they get the benefit from what they want to do.
Right.
And it's like,
Yes, I agree.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like you get in, it's like Republicans didn't care about sullying their names in the mud with Trump when he was moving the birtherism shit and again advancing their agenda. It wasn't they didn't have a problem. They loved Donald Trump.
Right.
But when Donald Trump tried to take over their party and be the face of it, then it's
now we got the Lincoln Project.
We're not Trump. It's like, no, you created Trump. You fed into it.
And you were Trump. He just
and then it's like, yeah, exactly. So that's why, like, you don't get a pass here, and that's my thing. Like, you don't get a pass.
No, yeah, I agree with not getting a pass. I think we're kind of saying the same thing. I think I'm a little more weary just because I saw what a lot of my Muslim friends went through, and you grew up in the same area I did. So like the Muslim community is a big. I grew up in New York. I know you grew up New York, New Jersey area. And there's a large Muslim community. And I know a lot of people who were picked. Like you get what I'm going with this. I just don't. I don't want to do. I don't want to label, and I don't want to become what I saw growing up to another group of another religion. Although let
me just say this. I know a lot of white Christian conservatives. I work with some. I get along with them. They're great people. They just happen to disagree, and we could disagree. You think we should bomb a nation, or you think we shouldn't, or you think that this foreign policy deal is good, or this isn't, or this tax plan is good. We can disagree on things.
Right.
But as long as you respect me and you respect my ability to be a human being and exist and my life matter and my kids' lives matter, we're good. We can disagree on other shit. Like, we don't have to agree. I don't care. I personally don't give a fuck. Right. So I say that in saying that I know a lot of white Christians and I respect them. Good, solid people, go to church, go to work, take care of their family, want to do well, live the American dream, all that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people that sully their name to advance their agenda, that they don't give a fuck who they got to get in bed with, what neo-Nazi crazy lunatic they've got to get that suits their agenda for that given day. I'm talking about them, the evangelicals that put in these right-wing judges, these evangelicals that support organizations to advance their agenda. That's who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So let me be clear with that. I'm not talking about everyone. I'm not painting a broad brush or putting a blanket on every conservative or every Christian that believes in this or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that.